My son is turning into a werewolf. I love James more than I love life itself. I remember the day I gave birth to him. I looked at that little bundle of human in my arms with pure joy. He was beautiful with hazel brown eyes, just like his late father who, due to a thyroid disorder, passed before he was born. We got along well as just the two of us. Outside of my job, I spent nearly all my time with little James and rarely needed to entrust him to a babysitter. When he was 6, he expressed an interest in the piano when he saw Great Balls of Fire on TV one evening. We bought a baby grand within a month and had a music teacher come over once a week. He was a fast learner and I could see him playing at concert halls as an adult. At school he was no different. He was a smart, well-behaved boy all through elementary school. At parent-teacher conferences, his teachers were sure to tell me what wonderful manners he had and how he was sure to always raise his hand before speaking. He was a pleasure compared to other more rambunctious boys, they would tell me. He wasn't your typical dirt-ridden little boy either. He was practically Victorian in how prim and proper he acted. Never would there be grass stains found on his knees. Never would he have to be told to take off his shoes before entering the home. He kept himself and the area around him clean as could be. That is until recently. Ever since he started junior high, I noticed he's been messy. His hair, that is now kept longer, nearly shoulder length, is disheveled and his clothes often have holes in them. About a month ago, I politely reminded him he was due for a haircut. The only response I received was a grunt. I looked a little closer at him and realized a shave might be in order too. At dinner, he ate his food in a hurry, often chewing with his mouth open. And let me tell you, he ate a lot, sometimes requesting third helpings of pasta and bread. When he made these requests, his mouth was often full of food. His manners had nearly fully dissolved. When I was doing the laundry, I had to use spot cleaner on his clothes for the various stains found. This was never needed before, but was another changed trait found in my previously spotless boy. On top of it all, he asked to cancel his piano lessons and now refuses to play anymore. The baby grand sits here unloved and unappreciated. Soon his temperament became apparent even to his teachers. He brought home a teacher's note that I had to sign. He had received detention for cursing at his history teacher, F-word in case you're wondering. James tried to assure me it wasn't a big deal, but some kind of punishment had to be doled out. I settled on grounding him for a month and hoped that would set him straight. Well, that's when he really done it. A few days after this, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed his bedroom door slightly ajar. I looked inside and his bed appeared suspiciously flat. Out of anger at what I suspected, I ripped the blankets off the bed and confirmed he was gone. It was past midnight and his curfew was a solid 9 p.m. Not to mention he was grounded. I didn't want to disturb anyone at such an hour, but I had to find out where he was and thought to call a few of his friends. As I picked up the phone, I heard a car door slam. I went to the front door to see him walking up the driveway. Before he had a chance to enter, I swung open the door and gasped at him under the patio light. What I saw was not what any mother would expect from a 13-year-old boy. His face was nearly completely covered in thick hair other than a small area around his eyes. I was speechless for a moment while I stared at him. I looked past him and towards the car that dropped him off and saw a girl at the steering wheel driving off. "James, what?" I started. "Nothing, Mom, Jesus. I was just out with a friend," he responded as though everything was perfectly natural. He pushed past me. Before he could get to his room, I grabbed his arm, only to immediately let go in horror. What I felt beneath my palm was an unnatural coarseness. His arm was covered in hair? No, this was not hair. This was fur. I looked closer at his torso, and I realized his shirt was torn at the neck seam. My eyes moved further down and my heart nearly stopped when I spotted what looked like a small stain of blood on his jeans. He shoved my arm away with his hand, and I let out a shriek when one of his long nails scratched my arm. "Ow, James, you clawed me. What happened to you? Will you leave me alone?" he shouted while slamming his bedroom door shut. I stood outside the door for a moment, but I was too scared to open it. Besides, I knew what I had to do. Teenage boys with this condition would only become more out of control as they developed into men. So I went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I'm now in my bedroom with my butcher knife on my lap. I know what you were thinking. You're thinking I raised him wrong. I raised a nice, good boy. What he has is a disorder. The disorder is leakinism, and count yourself lucky if you've never experienced it firsthand. He's nearly full werewolf now, and I know only one tried and true way to cure it. That time I saw a skinwalker, a witch, and a werewolf. Late summer, 1986. We were driving through the Rocky Mountains on our way to Ouray. There were three of us, Steve, Danny, and me. We were young, dumb, and fed up with what life was really like after college. So we bought some matches, packed a cooler of beer, food, and beer, and loaded up my trusty Toyota with all the fixings for a classic camping trip. This trip was supposed to shake up the devastating monotony of our daily life, and shake us up it did, to the very core. Right before we were getting ready to set out, Steve's mom ran out of the house and told him he should take their newly adopted family dog, Luna, for safety. Steve was hesitant. He didn't want to have to look after the dog, especially if we were going to be drinking. And she was a big dog, a mixed husky and something else, Great Dane maybe. But his mom insisted until, finally, he broke and agreed to take her. Luna looked up at him with her warm blue eyes and seemed to smile. Steve sighed and said, "I guess I'll sit in the back with her." "No, no," I said, walking over and patting her head. "Let her sit up front with me." She wagged her tail. Most of the car ride went smoothly, and we sang along to the radio, mooed at cows, and waved at, or flipped off, motorcyclists. But as we neared our destination, and the sun sank behind us leaving us in a thick, almost tangible darkness, we started to become jumpy, pointing at strange shadows and swift movements. Luna, though, was curled up and asleep beside me, unaware of our growing fear. The sky was covered in big, roiling clouds that blew swiftly towards the east, covering and revealing the full moon at random intervals. By now, we were the only vehicle on the road. My headlights barely sliced the darkness around us as we weaved our way through the mountains. The isolation, the darkness, the silence, it was all so crushing. "Steve, I thought you said we would be there before the sun set. I told you we shouldn't have stopped at that bar." Danny, I didn't know we'd be there for that long. You wouldn't stop your stupid pool game. And I won. Come on, it's not that dark out. Would some money make you happy? You asho. Hey, cool it, look, what the hell is that? I slowed the car down to a stop, trying to see what was blocking the road, but the light from the cloud-covered moon was too dim. What the hell? Danny, I whispered as she rolled down her window. I was apprehensive, worried this was someone's attempt to rob us, or worse. I had heard all the urban legends before. I just want to see better. She stuck her head out of the window, and I rolled a little bit closer. Luna, feeling the change in the car's movement, lifted her head and sat up, panting. Oh shit, I think it's a dead deer. You guys, gross. Danny retreated back inside the car and rolled the window back up. Who the hell just leaves something like that on the road? Assholes, Steve said, then leaned forward. Hey man, think you can drive around it? Yeah, I think I can. I approached the thing, now seeing the antlers and the gleaming black eyes, open, staring, dead. It blinked. I yelped and jerked the steering wheel, side-swiping the mountainside. Shit, what the hell, man? It's alive. What? That fucking deer. It's alive. As I spoke, the deer lifted its head and bleated. The sound echoed around the chasm. We all jumped and watched as it pushed itself up until it was standing on its hind legs, like a man, but uncanny, grotesque. Mesmerized, we sat unable to move as the thing walked over to us, slowly, decidedly, as if walking on two legs was a thing this deer did often. It leaned down next to Danny's window, its face so close to the glass that steam from its nose fogged it up. A low noise rang out through the car. Luna was growling, her hackles raised, crouched in the seat next to me. Bang! The thing rammed its head into the window. Chaos erupted. Danny screamed, piercing. Hi! Luna started barking, booming, persistent. Steve yelled, telling me to fucking go. Just go. I, shaking, struggled with the clutch, stalling, stalling, stalling.
Bang!
The window cracked and the thing started making an incredible sound. It sounded like a weird screeching, guttural form of laughter. Finally, the clutch caught, and I sped the hell out of there. I checked the rear view and saw the thing, standing on 2 legs, looking after us. Suddenly, it leapt forward and began running after us. It ran on 2 legs instead of 4, and it was fast, so fucking fast. I drove as fast as I could on that winding mountain road, but, despite my speed, the thing still caught up with us. It tapped its antlers on my window and screeched that weird laughter again. Then it pointed in front of us, bared its teeth, and stopped. The abruptness of how quickly it disappeared caught me off guard. Watch out! I snapped forward, and what I saw made me slam on my brakes. A house. A fucking house, in the middle of the road. I guess it was more of a cottage or a hut, but there it was, clear, vivid, in front of us. Danny was audibly crying in the back seat, repeating, "What the fuck?" over and over to herself. Steve was breathing heavily, like he had just run a marathon. Luna was whimpering beside me and scratching at the window. Nausea enveloped me, made worse by the vibration from my pounding heart. Seriously, what the fuck is going on? I think I'm going to puke, man. Don't fucking open that door. Just back up, turn around, man. Let's go back. Towards that thing? No fucking way, man. Well, if you didn't fucking notice, there's a goddamn house in front of me. Just drive through it, come on. No, 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 no. Danny, calm down. It's okay. We're okay. We'll be okay. Danny simpered and started sobbing again. Shut the fuck up, Danny, please. Guys, look. Oh God. The house, it was spinning, slowly, and stopped when the front of it pointed directly at my car. The door to the house slammed open, emitting a sound like a gunshot. A single point of light emerged from the darkness inside the house. A candle, and holding it up was a figure, stooped over, covered in what looked like blackened rags. It began to approach us, lurching forward swift, then slow, then swift again. It was making this eerie deep staccato sound. Are you for real right now? Steve was leaning forward, peering out the windshield. Let's go. Reverse. That thing is behind us. Run it over. Look, look. Danny screamed. The stooped figure was now running at full speed straight at us. It slammed onto my hood, and we could finally see that it was an old woman, covered in wrinkles, completely bald, with sharpened yellow teeth. She was moaning and moaning. She crawled up the hood, opened her mouth, and licked the glass, leaving a trail of blood-colored saliva. Luna went wild, barking, foaming at the mouth, throwing herself at the door. Please, 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 please. Back up now. I slammed my foot on the gas, but my tires made a sickening sound, and the smell of burnt rubber slipped into the car. It's behind us. It's fucking behind us. I turned back to see the deer's head, teeth still bared, peering at me from the back window. Shit, fuck. What do we do? What do I do?
Luna, no.
With a final lunge, Luna forced the door open. It sounds shocking, but she was such a large dog and strong. A powerful wind picked up and the roiling clouds dissipating, allowing the light from the full moon to illuminate the scene in front and behind us. Luna was as still as a statue, slightly crouched, poised to leap. The hackles on her back quivered, and a single thread of drool spun itself down from her mouth. She began to shake, faster and faster. It looked like she was having a seizure. The old woman and the deer thing were both looking over at her. Something strange was happening to Luna. It looked as if her limbs were breaking, elongating. Her snout narrowed, sinking closer to her face. She rose up onto her hind legs, humanoid, and howled up towards the sky before locking eyes with the hag on my car. In the blink of an eye, Luna was on the woman, ripping her away, shaking her to and fro in her jaw like a rag doll. Luna flung the woman towards the house, and she struck it with some force and didn't get back up. The house and the woman vanished in a puff of smoke. Luna turned towards the thing behind us. It screeched, raising itself up to its full height, challenging her. Luna howled again, then licked her fangs. The thing took 2 steps towards her, before turning tail and fleeing down the road, Luna giving chase. They both ran on 2 legs instead of 4. We sat in total silence for a few moments until I leaned over and slammed the passenger side door closed. I think Danny passed out. I turned to look at Steve. He looked at me. Let's get out of here, man. We got 2 miles before the thunk, thunk, thunk beneath us couldn't be ignored any longer. A flat tire. I pulled over, and we eyed the darkness around us, paranoid. I'm not changing it. I'm not going out there, Steve said loudly. Don't worry, there's no spare. What? I took it out, to make room for all the camping stuff. Are you fucking kidding me? Nope. Well, what the hell do we do now? I sighed. I didn't know. Suddenly, like magic, like a miracle, headlights appeared behind us. A godsend, a car. I hope they're normal. Me too. Should we tell them? We locked eyes again.
No.
If they bring it up, maybe. If it's a cop, definitely not. He'll think we're high. The car rolled up beside us. It was totally black with tinted windows. The window rolled down, and behind it sat a middle-aged man. He looked tired, maybe sad. Need some help? Oh, thank God, Steve whispered. Yes, flat tire. Don't have a spare. Well, that's dumb, the man said. You should always carry a spare, always. Never know what could happen. Lucky for you. I think I have one that will fit your car. You joking? The man shook his head and hopped out of his car. He was dressed sharply. Black suit, black tie, black shoes, all covered by a trench coat. Come on. You can hold the flashlight for me. I hesitated, then exited the car. What happened here? He pointed to the window next to Danny's head. Oh, it's been like that for a while. Dumb neighbor kid hit it with a baseball. The man nodded. And her? Tired, just tired. We've been driving for a while. Driving where? Ouray. For camping. Nice place. We've heard. Say, the man said, releasing the jack. Job done. Seen anything weird tonight? My heart sped up, and I looked around us half expecting the deer, or the woman, or Luna to come sprinting towards us. What do you mean weird? Oh, I dunno. Anything out of the ordinary. No, why? Oh, no reason. Just heard some spooky tales.
Tales.
That the natives who used to live around here would tell. What tales? The man stood up and dusted his hands off on his coat. Well, he said, ignoring my question, you're all set? You're about 20 minutes out from Ouray, and 2 hours from the sunrise. I'd advise you get a move on. Never know what might be stalking you out there. I'm headed the same way, actually. I can drive behind you if you like. A muffled, yes, came from inside the car, and we both looked up to see Steve nodding voraciously. Yeah, that would be great, actually. The corners of the man's mouth twitched a bit as he nodded, sliding back into his car. We drove to Ouray without incident and, as soon as we hit the city, the man in the car behind us flashed his brights twice, then flipped a U-turn, speeding back down the way we came. I thought he said he was going this way. I said looking in my rear view. Who cares? Let's get a hotel room and leave first thing tomorrow morning, Danny said. She had woken up as we were driving towards Ouray. We filled her in on the strange man and how he helped us, but she was still spooked and jumpy. And we did just that. We didn't dare camp in the wilderness, or even leave the relative safety of the town. On the way back to civilization, we swore to never tell anyone what happened. It was too weird, uncanny, horrifying. Steve was silent, afraid of what his mom might say or do about Luna. We made up some story about how she had fallen over a cliff after chasing a deer. Poor Luna. We did stop for an hour, around the area it happened, and called out to her, but to no avail. We never saw her again. It's been years since this happened and I'm old now. The 3 of us lost touch after we returned from the trip, but vowed to keep this secret to our death. Last I heard, Steve died from a heart attack and Danny was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I figured it's about time I shared my tale. Maybe it'll help me make some semblance of sense out of it. In the end, though, I don't know if those things were protecting us from her, or if she was protecting us from them. I guess I'll never know. Sometimes late at night, when I hear howling, I like to imagine it's Luna, out there, somewhere, running free in the wild. I think I'm turning into a werewolf. Oh, my. God, Sophie said, and fell back against the sheets, exhausted. I haven't been fucked like that since I was a little girl. I fell down next to her, panting as well, and laughed. Sophie, that's terrible. I grabbed the pillow from beneath my head and hit her with it, and her breasts jiggled. What can I say? You bring out the worst in me. She smiled beneath her messy hair, moist with sweat. Ha, don't I know it? I smiled back. You'll pay for that. Later. Sophie threw the pillow back, and it hit me in the face. We fell asleep, and when we woke up the evening had turned night. Damn, I said. Now my sleep cycle's going to be all messed up. Sophie got out of bed and got dressed. She slipped on her watch and looked at its face. Double damn, I'm going to be late for Lydia's party. She pulled her sweater over her head. I've got to run, dear, but it's been smashing as always. She bent down to kiss me, and I kissed her on the lips. Of course, always too busy for little old me, I said wistfully. Sigh, what is a boy to do? I put the back of my hand up against my forehead dramatically and laughed. She stuck out her tongue at me. Bye, Tommy. Bye, Sophie. I got dressed and headed out to the bar. I was meeting Jack at 10. It had started to rain, and then night felt cold and alive, earlier than it was. It was when I passed by the alley on 73rd next to that Chinese restaurant. The narrow one that somehow seemed extra dark and always freaked me out ever since I had started noticing it, that I heard a strange noise. It sounded like a mix between a yelp and a growl. I stopped in my tracks, not knowing whether to investigate or run. My choice was made for me, though. A woman stumbled out of the alley. The sight of her made my blood run cold. She was wearing a shredded tank top and jeans, both soaked in blood. She had blood in her hair, and on her face too. There was so much of it that it was pooling down by her feet. I wanted to call out to her, but my voice was stuck in my throat. She didn't need me to say anything, though. She was already making her way over to me. Are you hurt? I managed to whisper, but the look on her face answered that for me. It wasn't a look of pain or fear. It was a look of determination, of anger, of hatred. It was then that I began wondering if the blood was hers or someone else's. I panicked, fearing for my life. I should have run. I know that now. But hindsight is 20/20ths. I guess the adrenaline made me think that I was stronger than her. Plus, I thought to myself, what if she is hurt and needs help? Did I really want to walk away from someone who could be dying? She was only a few feet away from me when she fell to the ground. I should have asked her if she was okay. I should have said that I was going to get help. I should have ran. But I didn't. I did the opposite. I walked up to where she was sitting, and I crouched down next to her. That was where everything went wrong. Suddenly, the woman jumped up, and before I could move, she threw me to the ground. My vision turned starry as a searing white pain burst through my skull. I only partially saw her face as she bent towards me. I couldn't tell if it was just the blurriness, but were her teeth sharpened? Now is not the time to worry about people's dental hygiene. I reminded myself, trying to pull myself away from whoever this crazy bitch was. My head immediately disagreed, screaming in agony. The woman barked out a laugh above me. There was nothing else I could do but slowly, pathetically, painfully try to drag myself across the sidewalk and as far away as possible. With every shift of my body, she took a patronizing step towards me.
Ashit.
I finally hit the wall. She started bending down towards me again. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a low moan. I was powerless against whatever she was going to do. Without warning, her head jerked hard to my neck and ripped at the skin, leaving a huge, gaping wound as her nails dragged down my chest. I don't remember if I physically screamed, but mentally I have never been louder. A few more bites, and I was on the verge of passing out. From the distance, somebody screamed, and all I could think in my fucked up state was, same. For some reason, the woman attacking me seemed off-put by this and got up, slinking back into the alley, tripping onto her hands and knees as she did. As red and blue flashes soon came into my quickly fading vision, I realized that somebody must have called the police or an ambulance. I vaguely noticed two people run over to with some sort of contraption, and they began to lift me up onto it. There, I whispered, trying to point to the alleyway, but my arm falling miserably to my side.
What?
One of the people said. The woman. I slurred out. They didn't seem to understand. It's all right, sir. We're going to take you to help. I kept trying to tell them who attacked me, but to no avail, as I passed out almost as soon as they rolled me into the ambulance. I woke up in a hospital bed with no recollection of anything that had happened the night before. Very slowly, the pieces started to fill in. I tried to sit up, but there was so much pain everywhere that I immediately collapsed again. Rendered immobile, all I could do was wait for someone to come check in on me. What felt like forever later, I noticed two people standing outside my door. I didn't recognize them, but I could recognize that they seemed to be arguing over something. Eventually, the man ran his hands over his face before quietly stepping into my room. "Tommy," he said, "good to see you awake."
I'm Dr. Engelman.
What? I couldn't manage any more words than that. I truly was exhausted. Yes, there are quite a few things to tell you. Would you like the good news first, or the bad news? Good news, I croaked out through a parched mouth and cracked lips. I saw his eyebrows raise a fraction as he ticked off a box that read, cognizant and responsive. He looked back up at me and saw my eyes on his clipboard, which he turned so that I couldn't read it. Well, Tommy, the good news is that we saved your life. You will recover all your motor functions, and mostly lead a normal life. He stopped talking and looked at me. Bad news? I croaked, drinking some water. Well, not sure exactly how bad it is, or if it is entirely bad. There is quite a bit of cosmetic scaring from the animal attack, and once we get you fit enough to leave of your own recognizance, or a family member comes to get you, we can discuss some options in that respect. Now, the odd news. The animal that attacked you seems to have infected with what seems to be some sort of benign form of rabies. I sat up suddenly in shock. The doctor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Tommy, please, relax. I said it was benign, which means we believe it is harmless. I was still skeptical and Engelman could see it, plain as day, on my face. We treated you while you were unconscious for rabies. That's part of the muscle soreness you're feeling, and it seems to have paid off. You're a lot better off than you were when they brought you in here 2 weeks ago. I dropped my water cup and found my voice again. 2 weeks. It made my throat raw. What the? Please tell me you're fucking with me. Engelman gave me a sheepish look and explained. You presented with swelling of the brain and the bite was severely infected, and we thought it prudent to place you in a medically induced coma. I sat there and took in the news. I asked absent-mindedly for a phone to call Sophie or my folks. I called Sophie first. Tommy, she exclaimed, I'm already on my way with your parents. They called them. Then they called me as soon as you were awake. We chit-chat about how I was feeling and what all I couldn't remember. In less than 20 minutes, they all three burst into my room. It hurt to talk. Not much had changed since I was attacked. I was a missing person for a few days before everyone was sorted out. Then I asked Soph to close the door. Listen, it wasn't an animal. It was a woman that bit me. They looked at me sideways. Tommy, my mother cooed. I think they would be able to recognize if it was a person. Soph sat her hand on my head. I shook it under her fingernails for a refreshing scratch. That simple action soothed me. Ever since waking up, it had felt like my head was being split slowly in half. It felt like every muscle I had was stiff and sore. I had constantly felt on edge, and the attack from 2 weeks ago flashed through my mind. I could still see the woman's hunched back, the mania in her eyes, her jagged teeth. Wait, was it really a woman? My mother had a point. Maybe the doctors were right. Maybe it really was a rabid animal that had attacked me. My head pained me. My vision swam. I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I felt happy with Sophie there, scratching my head. Everything's going to be all right, babe, she said. I closed my eyes. Thanks. Thanks for coming here so quickly. It's fine, Sophie said. You should really be thanking Dr. Engelman and the other doctors here. They saved you. We were scared to death, Tommy. We thought we'd lost you. I spent about a week here, waiting by your side. I'm sorry. Fuck, I'm so sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about, son, my father said. None of this is your fault. We're just glad you survived. The others weren't so lucky. The others? I croaked. My mother slapped my father's arm and said something to him in a hushed whisper, but he continued. There were a few other victims. Others around the area who got attacked by the same animal. 10 people died that night, maybe more. I recalled the scream I had heard on the night of the incident. So it had been another victim. That's terrible. Holy shit, I said. Sophie told me more. Word is that the doctor and his team proposed the same coma treatment for the others. Unfortunately, it wasn't as effective for them. Apparently, you were all in critical conditions, and the treatment was a Hail Mary that may or may not have worked. That's not what Dr. Engelman said, I stammered. She patted me on the head, ruffling my hair, comforting me. He was probably trying to lighten the load for you. You've been through a lot, babe. Don't worry about any of that, sweetie, my mother said soothingly. You're safe now, and that's all that matters. We don't have to worry about anything else. We were interrupted by someone knocking on the door. My father went to get it. It's Dr. Engelman. He said, they want to do a quick checkup to make sure you're all right. Hans off. We have to wait outside. As a team of doctors began to file inside, bearing all sorts of notes and equipment, my mother and girlfriend got up to leave. Sophie gave me a quick hug, embracing me in my bed. She pecked me on my right cheek, and then she said something into my ear in a subtle, hushed whisper. 3 words. 3 words that sent a chill crawling down my spine. Don't trust him. My parents and Sophie left and Engelman came back into the room, a big grin across his face. You're feeling better, son. Quiet and ordeal you've been through. These are the sorts of things he said. He said they were conditionally releasing me but wanted me to come back in a couple days for observation. I signed some forms. They gave me my things back. Engelman was there still grinning next to me the whole time, then finally said goodbye and disappeared into the labyrinthine green hallways of the hospital with his brown clipboard. Mom, Dad, and Sophie were waiting for me at the exit. We all hugged and Sophie kissed me. I love you, son, my dad said. I'm just glad you're all right. I love you too, Dad, I said. I just want to go home. Mom and Dad said goodbye and got into their white Chevy and drove away. Sophie and I got into her car and took off out into the night. It was dark outside and the moon was bright and full and round and white. 2 weeks, I thought. It feels like months have passed. It felt like time had no meaning anymore. I scratched behind my ear and looked at the hairs on my arm. They seemed darker than I remembered somehow. Sophie said how crazy everything was and how she thought I was dead. She started to cry, and I watched her wipe away tears glistening in the moonlight with her index finger. Her left hand stayed on the steering wheel, but I could see she clutched it tightly. It was dark in the apartment. The only light was that of the full moon pouring in through the bay windows. I didn't turn on the lights. For some reason, I didn't feel like it. Just threw my things on the floor and kicked off my boots. Sophie reached for the light switch, but I grabbed her hand. Tommy, she said softly. Her cheeks were still wet from crying. What are you doing? Shoo, I said, and kissed her. My lips were still dry. She kissed me back hard and then held me, and in the darkness I couldn't quite tell, but it sounded like she was crying again. I missed you so much, she said. I put my hands on her, and we kissed again. Her tongue was warm and soft in my mouth, and it tasted good. Like, really good. Have you ever had a steak that was so perfectly cooked that you had to resist from shoving the whole thing in your mouth? It was like that, only better. I couldn't help myself. I bit her tongue. Ow! Sophie screamed and jumped up. What the fuck, Tommy? I started apologizing profusely, tripping over my words as I took a gentle step towards her. Babe, I don't know what, I didn't. I dash as I kept walking towards her. I could feel myself wanting to bite into her flesh again. Oh God, it was overwhelming. I spent my entire consciousness trying to push it back down my throat. I don't even remember how I got her to sit back down again, but somehow we were back on the couch together. Close. Very close. It was like I could smell her heartbeat. It was right there, in her throat, and I needed it down mine. Something animalistic came from deep inside me, and I started ripping apart her skin, trying to get whatever it was I needed from her. I hear her screams for a moment, and then suddenly, they stopped. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. It just felt right. The taste of her skin and the texture of her blood, and finally I knew why that woman attacked me like this. Oh shit. I don't know why that thought snapped me out of my craze, but suddenly, I sat back and looked at what I had done. There was Sophie, or what was left of Sophie, covered in dark red from my couch to my kitchen. I had done that. Yet, I felt almost nothing. I knew, deep inside me, that I should be panicking, hyperventilating, running screaming out of my building, but that part was silenced by everything else in me. I calmly stood up and walked into my bathroom. It was only when I looked in the mirror that I began to feel. There was my reflection, except it looked nothing like me at all. Suddenly, I had a huge mange of hair all over my chin, some covering the rest of my face. As I internalized what I saw, I raised my hand to feel my face and saw that my hand, too, was suddenly covered in more hair than a dog's tail. Then since that none of that, should have happened hit me all at once and I began to freak out. I clawed my skin, wishing desperately to be who I was only last month, when Sophie and I were happy and together and alive and normal and it took what felt like forever for me to calm down. I'm still panicked. I'm still lost. But I made myself sit up and look back in the mirror. It was too much. Too much change. Too much hair. I know. It's fucked up to be sitting here worrying about a beard when my girlfriend's corpse and torn up in my living room. Nothing makes sense right now. Nothing has made sense since the night of the attack. I was going to turn myself in. I don't want to live like this, knowing what I did, knowing that I liked it, but there's only one thing that stopped me. Just a minute ago, I got a call from Dr. Engelman. With a shaky hand, I slipped my phone out of my back pocket and picked it up, but before I could even say anything, he whispered, "Shh, there's no time. I know what you just did. I know what you are. Don't worry. I'm coming. Just close all your blinds, all right? Don't let the moonlight in, and don't go outside. I'm coming." And with that, he hung up. So, what? I turn myself in, saying that I'm a werewolf now and be put in a mental hospital, or I wait here and hope that Dr. Engelman know what he's talking about. I could run away, but that only increases the risk that I'll hurt another person. To me, it seems that I only have one option. I can only hope it's the right one. Still, as I sit here, waiting, Sophie's words keep playing in my mind, like she was still whispering them into my ear at this very second. Don't trust him. Hey, Dad. I caught the werewolf. This morning, my son Corey called me again. He once again recited his infamous catchphrase to me. Hey, Dad. I caught another werewolf. My son, Corey, hunts werewolves. He has hunted them ever since he was a child. He caught his first when he was 9 years old. Back then, there were no cell phones or computers to entertain every kid. They had to use their creativity and more practical games to have fun. Corey was no different. He was a very imaginative kid and spent his days talking about fantasy worlds, movies, and books with his classmates. That and playing ball. My son had an amazing throw. You wouldn't think it was a kid's arm that chucked an object judging by the force. We haven't played ball in a while, but to be honest, I don't think I could keep up with him at my age. Corey grew up to be something of a giant. He got it from his mother's side. I am certainly not that big. Anyhow, at some point the entire town was talking about some ape-man lurking around at night with shining bright, flashy eyes. Nobody knew what the hell that the thing was. Some people thought it might be Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. I personally never took it seriously. I thought it might be some bear running around looking for food, or just some drunk stumbling around. I assumed the flashy eyes were just an invention of some passionate storytelling. At some point, the kids picked up on that thing too, and it was all the rage. Kids spoke about a great, human-like shadow walking around their windows at night. Others claimed they've met the creature or had spoken to it. Apparently, Beaton's kid called the thing a talking gorilla. While some people were getting concerned, most of us didn't get too bothered with childish imagination and conspiracy theories. No one was getting hurt, so none of us adults ever bothered checking what was behind the sightings. One morning, Corey came to have breakfast and said that the ape-man was actually a werewolf. I asked him why he decided it was a werewolf, so he told me he watched it from his window. The creature showed up at night, and its bright eye shone at my son, waking him up. Looking at the window, he saw a strange creature covered in hair with its back turned to his window. He said the creature was moving its arms back and forth near its legs before howling and running off into the darkness. My wife wasn't too pleased with my son being awake in the middle of the night. I thought it was probably just some local fauna that caught Corey's attention. Corey wouldn't stop talking about the supposed werewolf for months. Werewolf this, werewolf that. He tried to convince his friends that the strange creature was a werewolf, which led to a fight between a few of them. It was getting tiresome to hear constantly about this werewolf, but what could we do? The kid had an active imagination. Some kind of wildlife was roaming around our small town at night. The kid thought it was a mythical beast. What do we do? Catch the animal to prove him otherwise? We let him have his fun. One day he asked me, "Dad, what should I do if the werewolf gets too close?" I told him, "You have a strong arm. Just throw something at it and it'll run away from you." He smiled, thanked me, and ran off to play with his friends that day. I thought little of it. 3 days later, in the middle of the night, Corey comes to our bedroom and nudges me awake. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, kiddo?" I asked him, still half asleep. "I caught the werewolf," he says, the glee obvious in his voice. "Buddy, it's the middle of the night, you should go to bed. Just like the werewolf probably went to bed." I groaned, turning in my bed. "He's in my room right now." I saw his bright eye shining through the closet door. As he said that, I felt a knife twist itself in my chest. My whole body turned cold, and I bounced out of bed. He's never had his imaginary friends or monsters come over. This werewolf thing, no one ever said it showed up in their houses, just lurked around the windows at night. It began to click for me. "Come on, Corey, show me this werewolf," I whispered, attempting to maintain my composure as I walked my son towards his room. My wife woke up and asked what had happened. I told her Corey put the werewolf to sleep. She raised a thumb in approval, smiled her beautiful smile, and returned to her slumber. Corey and I walked straight up to his room. The door was wide open. A familiar sight caught my vision, a camera. My mind went into overdrive, his shining eye, singular. Every single time Corey mentioned a shining eye, it was one eye, a single eye, a lens. It wasn't an eye, it was a lens. Everything started making sense and my body tensed up. My stomach knotted and my heart was trying to break through my rib cage. I was so worried something had happened to my Corey. "Son of a bitch," I muttered under my breath. The closet door was open ajar, and Corey exclaimed pridefully, "Look, I told you it's a werewolf." I stood there, confused, angry, and fearful. My mind was racing, my heart was struggling to follow, and my stomach was about to eject its contents through every orifice I had. I was losing touch with reality for a moment there. Corey's triumphant calls urging me to look at the fallen creature refocused my mind, but only for a second. Imagine my shock when I was a freakishly tall, hairy man with a gigantic beard lying naked next to my son's bedroom with a pin stuck deep within his eye. The Wichita werewolf. Growing up here, I was always greeted by friendly people. Everyone said hi and waved to each other. You had your neighbors over on Sunday after church for a barbecue, and everyone had a good time. Of course, being a kid, I was very curious and would explore while my parents were visiting with people from church. One afternoon, my friends and I played hide-and-seek. I had the bright idea to sneak down to the southern part of my neighborhood, which was run down. The farther and farther I got from my house, the darker the road became due to the foliage above blocking out the sun. The paved street turned to a dirt road. White picket fence turned into overgrown yards and abandoned houses. I found a hiding spot underneath an old pickup truck with weeds growing through the bed and cab. I was invisible to the naked eye. About 10 minutes passed and I could barely make out the conversations and laughter several houses down at the barbecue, as well as the screaming and commotion whenever one of my friends was found. Behind me I heard a stick break, but I didn't dare look. It was probably my friend Clay trying to find me. Suddenly, 2 denim-clad legs appeared in front of my face, barefoot but far too hairy to be any of my friends. I kept quiet. As the knees bent, I was met with an older man with 2 different-colored eyes. "What in the Sam hell are you doing down there, Boa?" "I'm hiding from my friends," I managed to reply. I crawled out from under the truck and realized I had never seen this man ever before. I was taught at a young age to have exceptional manners and introduced myself. The old man asked me if I wanted to come back to his house, enticing me with his recipe of homemade cornbread. Again, I retained my manners and kindly refused. Instead of being persistent, the old man nodded and told me to go and play with my friends. By this time, Clay saw me and started to head over, I walked towards him while motioning the timeout signal. "Why ain't you hiding?" he exclaimed. I told Clay how I was hiding until some man found me and I pointed back, but the man was gone. Nowhere to be found. As Clay was pestering me, claiming I stopped the game because I couldn't find a good hiding spot, I was staring at the old truck where I was hiding. The grass and weeds were much too thick that even standing here glaring at where I had been, I wouldn't be able to see myself. How did that man ever manage to see me? I finally convinced Clay that what happened was true, but Ryan and Jacob, or even Bo, didn't seem to believe me, or really care too much. Clay and I saw the man again, but this time he was walking down the dirt road on the south side of the neighborhood and walked into one of the houses we had always assumed was vacant. We had to investigate. The big cottonwood outside the house had squirrel bones stuck to the trunk, as well as a reflective light like you'd find on a bicycle nailed to either side. The man's house had a ripped screen door, as well as two big moths that crawled the wall by a cracked window. "I can't believe he lives here," Clay whispered. "Where did he come from anyway?" I asked. We turned around facing the dirt road. It was a no-outlet road, and at the end there was a fence that read, "No trespassing." Of course, two kids, we trespassed. As we climbed over the fence, a chill ran down my spine. Dread filled my ever-being, but I didn't want to seem like a wuss to Clay, so I manned up and kept my composure. Through the trees and thickets, we found a tattered old house that looked like it had been hit by the tornado a few years back. Next to it, an old shed with a broken-out window. On the ground around it looked like blood. Was it paint? Blood? From an animal? Back farther was a railroad track, and past that the other side of town. So we decided to go back to Clay's house. I could tell Clay also wanted to leave as much as I did. Fall swept in, bringing with it the sweet aroma of dead leaves and crisp morning air. It was still warm, but much more bearable than the summer. School had started, so playing with my neighborhood friends became something of a rarity, only hanging out on weekends or if we finished our homework at night. We had always enjoyed catching lightning bugs or playing in the treehouse at night, but this particular fall, all of our parents would usually limit how often we went over to each other's houses. The Southern Plains area of the U.S. is notorious for its human trafficking, but the autumn of 2004 was something else entirely. It all started when a kid from the West Side went missing. The police simply thought the kid got lost, but when they started their investigation, the trail went cold. The next week, a Baptist church down a couple blocks away from our road was having a fundraiser. 2 children from there also went missing. Was there some sort of connection? At night, I could swear I heard some sort of howling, followed by all of the dogs in my neighborhood barking. My father dismissed it, telling me I was hearing coyotes and that there weren't no wolves in Kansas. I knew what coyotes sounded like. We often encountered them while hunting. Parents do their best to keep their children from finding out how terrible the world can be. Their attempt was futile on the night of October 23rd. I was playing at Clay's house, along with my friend Ryan and Bo. He had quite the collection of toys, both new and hand-me-downs from his older brother. At around 9 p.m., Clay's parents get a call, and we hear footsteps coming towards the top of the stairs, which one of our parents wants.